Oh my god, just when you think Alex Kurtzman, Akiva Goldsman, Patrick Stewart, and the other criminals associated with this show couldn't sink any lower. And yes, criminals is the appropriate word here, because what they're doing is tantamount to a crime, and that crime is cultural vandalism. They managed to set a new low bar, and that low bar is Season 2 of Star Trek Picard. For the record, there are going to be spoilers in this review. However, if you're watching something that's this bad, is there anything really to spoil? In this season, we get answered the questions that we've never even bothered to ask, like, what if Agnes became the Borg Queen? Is there some sort of past trauma that's haunted Picard since childhood? Will Rios find love, or even better, become his own great-great-great-grandfather?
Mister, I'm my own grandpa.
What does the most dysfunctional lesbian couple look like anyway? Can't we reuse the same actors for just about every part and just claim that they're related to the main characters in some way? And many, many, many more. I would like to recount the story throughout this series, but there really doesn't seem to be one. The best way to describe Season 2 of Picard is that it feels like they had a bunch of script ideas, piled them all together, and then flung them into the air and attempted to assemble some sort of coherent storyline out of them by doing the necessary doctoring and rewrites. What you have then is an absolute mess of half-baked story ideas, plots that go nowhere, and characters that are so ill-tempered and unpleasant, they come off as completely and utterly unlikable. The plot, or what passes for one, goes a little something like this. Jean-Luc Picard is relaxing in his vineyard and starting to put the moves on his Romulan maid, Mrs. Doyle. A new Borg probe shows up and asks for him by name, and a new Borg queen tries to assimilate the fleet. There's a shootout on the bridge, for whatever reason, and the Borg queen tells him to look up. Picard then shows up back at his vineyard, and guess who's back? It's our old friend Q. Except now, the world and the galaxy isn't what it seems to be. Turns out there's a totalitarian government, and Picard is the greatest hero, or villain, in the Confederation. Oh yeah, and for some reason, 7 of 9 is now the president, and she's never been Borgified. Now Picard and crew have to take another Borg Queen back to the year 2024 and figure out how to put their world back together. If that sounds a little too familiar, it should. The writing staff, assuming that someone actually sat down to write this thing, has cherry-picked elements from various Star Trek movies and episodes, most notably Star Trek For the Voyage Home, First Contact, and various episodes of TNG and Voyager. The result is an incoherent mess full of plot threads that go unresolved and plot holes that don't make an ounce of sense when you hold them up to scrutiny. There's a running B-plot involving a relative of Soong and his clone daughter played by Issa Briones, but it comes off as so uninspired and uninteresting, it gets completely lost when Briones' character walks off screen and leaves it to the viewer scratching their head wondering if that was just completely pointless. It would seem that the focus this season is more on messaging than actual plot or character development. There's references to climate change, racism, immigration, wealth inequality, fascism, corporate greed, and homelessness. However, Picard is never smart enough to address any of these issues in any substantive manner. There's only lip service and no meaningful discussion or incorporation into the story. There's an offhand comment, and they move on to the next topic. For those who claim that Star Trek has always been political, Picard, or any other Star Trek series from Alex Kurtzman and company for that matter, has been unable to deal with those issues in any sort of substantive way. Whereas previous Star Trek series would deal with racism in an episode such as Let This Be Your Last Battlefield or Paranoia Conspiracy Theory in Drumhead, Picard and Discovery thus far have only told you this thing is bad and you should feel bad about it, while offering up no debate, no deeper discussion, and no potential for resolution to those problems. In Picard, the societal problems remain after they've mentioned them, and they aren't going anywhere. Racism is bad, climate change is bad, wealth inequality is bad, homelessness is bad, corporate greed is bad, persecuting immigrants is bad. What do we do about them? Well, damned if I know. We're just here to tell you that they exist and you should feel bad about them.
Their music's bad and you should feel bad.
No allegory, no moral, no debate, no solution. It's only enough that you know these things exist. They allude that climate change is quote-unquote solved because one of the crew stayed behind and his adopted son somehow cleaned the oceans and purified the air with some discovery by Picard's ancestor who went into space. This is not some sort of meaningful plot element or story device. This is hand-waving away a loose end in a throwaway line of dialogue after the fact. Also true to form, there are the standard gaps in logic and plot holes that plague Picard, as with every other Alex Kurtzman Star Trek production. They can't cause a butterfly effect, and yet they beam down into the middle of Los Angeles in broad daylight on a busy street, when it's a well-known part of Star Trek lore that transporters can conduct a scan and place a landing party in a remote area away from prying eyes. Seven and Raffi beam out of a squad car in full view of the LAPD and free a busload of immigrants who are being detained. Rios beams his lady doctor friend and her son onto the ship, giving them both knowledge of the future. And while we're at it, let's discuss the body count. Everyone is far too quick to just whack a guy who gets in the way without second thought as to how exactly this will change the future. Any one of these incidents would have a ripple effect and cause a break in the timeline in ways they couldn't imagine, yet it's all ignored because reasons? There's also the matter of Picard's past that comes up and attempts to play a pivotal part in the series. It seems that the great Jean-Luc Picard, hero of Starfleet and one of the most decorated officers in the history of the Federation, has been haunted by the death of his mother, for whom he felt responsible for, as he was the one who let her out of her room the night that she hanged herself. What the actual... Forget that we've already seen her as an old woman in Season 1 of TNG. This is yet another hallmark contrivance of Alex Kurtzman and company. Everyone seemingly needs a tragic backstory to motivate them. No higher calling, no sense of honor, duty, or loyalty. Everyone is experiencing some kind of hidden trauma that they're dealing with and are trying to work out, even at the ripe old age of 90. Hell, I'd even take boredom as a motivation at this point. It would surely be better than this crap. I'm sure that Strange New Worlds will be much more of the same, as from what I've been hearing, many of the characters have tragic backstories written in for them in order to make them deep and complex. A tragic backstory does not make someone a deep and complex character. This is yet another example of how Batman has contaminated movie making and modern television. Now, before anyone starts with me about how great The Dark Knight was, I like Batman just fine. Batman being this tragic figure works fine. For Batman! I do not want everything, nor everyone, to be Batman. Attaching a tragic backstory to Jean-Luc Picard simply does not work. And can someone please tell me why in every new iteration of Star Trek we need to have a shootout on the bridge?
No shoot fire stick in space canoe!
That's the one place you do not want to start indiscriminately shooting.
Cause explosive decompression!
Especially in the Kurtzman-Abrams era of Trek, where you have nothing but a thin pane of glass between you and the hard vacuum of space. To make matters worse, the ending, which was most likely tossed around a writer's room, and probably made everyone think that would be a great fan service moment, elicited a groan when I watched it. I won't spoil it here, but let's just say that the character they decided to bring back and make his presence more important than it actually is was not the fan favorite that they believed him to be.
Shut up, Wesley.
Picard is also technically a bad show. It's underlit, the action is contrived and laughable at times, and the whole thing smacks of cheapness, as if the plot of them walking around in modern-day Los Angeles was conceived all in an effort to save money, as they could use real-world locations and props and just build a couple of sets on a soundstage and an already existing Paramount backlot. It gives the whole season an uneven look to it. Nothing about this world seems organic, including the modern-day elements, and certainly not any of the sci-fi elements. For the money that was spent on CGI, it was wasted when it was offset by the cheapness of other aspects a few moments later. And to think you could have fed a small nation with that kind of dough. Picard is without a doubt one of the worst pieces of television I have ever seen. I say that with zero exaggeration or hyperbole. It is laughable, it is poorly written, it was poorly conceived. It is the type of television that you feel dumber after watching. It makes you agree with FCC Chairman Newton Minow when he said in his speech that television was a vast wasteland. But the worst thing about Picard is that it is a stain upon the legacy of both Jean-Luc Picard, one of the greatest television characters of all time, and upon Star Trek itself. It serves no purpose, not even one of being a piece of entertainment, as it was never entertaining. It adds nothing to the franchise and merely exists as a vanity project for Patrick Stewart, someone who I had great admiration for. That is until I saw Season 1 and 2 of Picard. This should serve as a warning as to why you do not let actors determine the direction of a major television series. I should feel anger, but I actually feel sadness and pity. Sadness that this is now the legacy of Jean-Luc Picard and of Patrick Stewart, one of the best actors I've ever seen. The pity I feel is for those who believe that this is somehow good and representative of Star Trek. They never knew a time when Star Trek The Next Generation was the gold standard in terms of thought-provoking science fiction, when it served as an example of the best of humanity and showed that our differences could be overcome when we realized we weren't that different to begin with. Now all we're left with is this hateful, unsophisticated mess that makes me remorseful that I wasted my time in the hopes that I would see something of the old Star Trek in the lumbering corpse that nobody has the heart to put down. There are those who claim that many Trek fans are living in the past. However, by the looks of it, it's people like Alex Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman who are living in the past. I would gladly move on along with a new cast and crew, yet they keep mining nostalgia for that next member berry. By the looks of it, they aren't done yet, as Strange New Worlds is a whole stock full of them. As there are only 2 original characters in Strange New Worlds, with one being a derivative of a previous character from the original series. Who is it now that's stuck in the past? Star Trek Picard Season 2 gets 0 Chewbacca's and gets 1 Jar Jar. That's it for now. See you next time.